So to begin, I want to talk about the body generally. The body is caught in what Elizabeth Gross identifies as three primary understandings. The body as an object of science, so its physicality, it's part of this natural phenomenon. The body as a tool or machine of consciousness, so in this understanding, it's kind of a passive object at the disposal of the active subject. And then the body as a signifying medium. So the body functions as this neutral conduit from the internal to the external and vice versa. The scientific, legal, and social discourses, which Foucault mentions specifically law in the above Butler quote, but these discourses construct the body and map themselves onto the body, albeit in culturally specific and invisible ways. Therefore, the body and its particular biological or reproductive functions are not the basis of determining womanhood or what even constitutes a corporeal body, but rather the body is an interpretable site on which these various discourses converge and interact. So, one of the charges that is often levied against Foucault is that in his theory he's focused on a general body, which generally translates to being a white male heterosexual body. His theory doesn't really allow for differentiation based on different race or gender, class, etc. Identity markers don't matter for Foucault. And that's where some feminist theorists like Judith Butler and Elizabeth Gross pick up. Butler asks in Gender Trouble, how do we reconceive the body no longer as a passive medium or instrument awaiting the enlivening capacity of a distinctly immaterial will? And Elizabeth Gross encourages feminists to return to biological understandings of the body, not as a return to biological essentialism and the problematic exclusions associated with that vein of philosophy, but more so as a way to make visible the material and specifically embodied experiences of all women. And this is where I think Carla Holloway makes some useful critical interventions into body studies by focusing specifically on how gendered and raced bodies are differentiated. So while Foucault is useful in elaborating these discursive influences on the body, it doesn't take into account that these are real bodies that are experiencing real prejudice. So Kimberly Crenshaw is useful here in how she talks about intersectionality, that the black female lesbian body is treated very differently in a court of law than a white male heterosexual body, and there's really no good way to understand this difference without intersectionality. You can't just isolate these identity markers. And so Carla Holloway here really does a great job of examining how gender and race influence like the understanding of the body, specifically as it relates to scientific and legal discourses. So when we're talking about female bodies specifically, they've had a rather different relationship to privacy and autonomy than we may expect of the white male body, as in privacy and autonomy are not granted necessarily to these bodies. As Holloway says, as human as the right to privacy might seem, it is a public history that absolutely renders it a socially selective privilege. So women have been typically constructed as a public resource available for anyone's use, and that's because of their reproductive potential. They are actually producing future citizens and the future of the country. So women's fertility and reproductive potential becomes a national issue. It's a national security issue. It's concern over this economic resource. And so because of that, the nation then, or the state, takes more of an interest in regulating and controlling this female population through biopolitical regulations and actions. So this biopolitical interest of the state in regulation and control causes women and minorities to become more public. Privacy is then a luxury that's not afforded to them, it's not given to them, and without privacy there can be no autonomy, Holloway argues. So this already contested understanding of the body in relation to privacy and autonomy is even more of a problem when we consider how bodies are constantly changing due to technology. And this is a topic which I'll take up more in the cyborg theoretical section. But the important takeaway from this section of body theory is that the body is not just a social medium, although that is a very important aspect, but it's also an embodied and real existence. And because of this embodied nature that's differentiated based on identity markers such as race and gender and sex, uh, the social controls of the state are differently regulated and imposed onto the bodies. And so, in this respect, female bodies are particularly vulnerable to state regulation and control.